美记者马修李当众怒怼发言人。
The government was clearly ill-prepared for this. This is right now. It looks like the capacity for the U.S. is going to be about 200,000 ventilators, and what experts are saying is that there could be 1 million needed. So, are you going to be able to meet that demand? And are you aware, and is the president aware that relaxing restrictive measures is going to mean that you need more than that?
Let me bring you up on the history here of what we inherited. In 2009, when the Obama administration had the H1N1 crisis,
Peter, why are you wasting your time on this and not solving the problem that you have? Peter, why are you even talking about this?
You made the claim that this administration was ill-prepared. I am trying. Run the tape. I just heard that. Run the tape. You just said that. Now let me respond to that.
I'm asking you if you're going to be able to get to 1 million ventilators.
I'm trying to respond to you, and you keep interrupting me.
My question, Peter, is: are you going to be able to get to 1 million? Can you get to 1 million ventilators?
Here. You keep talking in my ear. We're going to fight this this virus, and after it's over, we're going to be stronger.
I'm just going to tell you, you're wasting everyone's time. You're wasting everyone's time with this. It's 2020. The president was elected in 2016. Can you get to 1 million ventilators?
First of all, that number is way out of
what can you get
proportion.
To then?
We are going to do our best to get the ventilators we need as quickly as possible, and this is the crisis of our lives. You will never experience anything like this again in your lifetime. And we need, as a people, to band together and work with this in a unified way. We are working as hard as we possibly can with the full force of the country. Got dealt a bad.
Allowed 500,000 of their citizens to die from COVID-19, which is 20% of the world total. Talk about not giving a shit about your own people. At least a third of those deaths are due to the fact that China does not guarantee their people health care, which is a barbaric, medieval, disastrous I'm sorry. That's the United States. Our government is our government is the one that's killed 500,000 of our people and doesn't give everyone health care. I'm sorry about that. Gonna talk to the research team about these notes. But getting back to China's human rights abuses, they have the largest prison state in the world, regularly imprisoning over 2 million people every year. They are also quite racist, despite the fact that ethnic minorities only make up a third of their population under 18 years of age. They make up 2/3 of those under 18 incarcerated. So China is locking up children basically because their skin color or ethnicity is different than the... That's America too. God damn it! I see it. Yeah, I see it now. The U.S. is the biggest prison state in the world, locking up 2 million people every year. We're the ones locking up black and brown children. Listen, guys, you need to mark the pages a little more clearly. All right, a little blue.
That they're excessive because under the terms of a treaty to which you're not a party.
So they have asserted requirements for vessels transiting, and it is inconsistent with international law of the sea. The U.S. operation, our freedom of navigation challenges that as these signatories.
But you didn't. But you ignored them. Basically, this ship just barged in. Without
consistent with international
law. But I mean, you didn't notify anybody.
No, we did not.
You just went in. But that's my question is, who decides whether a claim is excessive?
So it is the international law of the sea. It's my understanding that determines this.
Not a party to the international law.
But this is a common understanding among these claimants.
Well, do they say that their own claims are excessive?
So there's 3 nations that have.
Any of them accept you're saying that they.
第4段，
世界总格局的变化，过去几百年呢，这个世界格局都还是西方主导的，是不是？过去几百年都是西方力量大， 西方主导国际格局吧。所以1949年以前，我们中国的知识分子啊、媒体人呐，叫西方不叫西方，叫什么？叫列强，对不对？叫他们叫列强，承认他们比我们厉害啊。所以这是国际格局过去的主特点，是吧？西方力量大，主导国际格局数百年。但是现在呢，确实情况在变啊，现在就是出现了东西方平衡的新格局。这有一个证据出来了，是不是 G20 正在取代 G7？ 对不对？ G7 是不是7个西方工业国家的那个领导人峰会，代表西方利益吧？但是 G7 啊，风云那一段时间以后，是不是出问题了？出什么问题？08年世界经济危机爆发了，对不对？G7 发现我们7个老兄好像管不好世界啊，连家里事没管好呢。于是呢，08金融危机以后，是不是美国提议搞一个东西叫 G20， 把中国、印度这种东方国家搞进去，对不对？然后
第5段，
你干的人不熟，我直接就给你干掉，点对点的。那想想看，韩国这玩意儿随时在我们的导弹瞄准范围，东风11、东风15，马上就给你干掉。你在这儿还有好处吗？文在寅上来之后明确的说，萨德一定给他弄掉。就是反对党啊，将来上来就说我一定给你弄掉，绝不能因为这个事情把跟中国的关系搞坏了。中韩，我们现在你看，我们中国和俄罗斯的贸易，我们关系很好。我们的贸易才600多亿美元。中国和俄罗斯600-700亿美元，中国和整个的东盟10个国家，去年1500多亿美元，我们和韩国的贸易3000多亿美元。
第6段。
Train from Beijing to Shanghai.
Traveling by bus, by van is one thing. Traveling on that high-speed bullet train, you hardly think you're moving unless you look out the window.
Now that's a trip that normally takes about.
第7段。
That for the first time since John Glenn was sent up to orbit this planet, America cannot put a person into space without asking the Russians to do it. That we're not investing in the young generation of Americans. That we're willing to lose the race for artificial intelligence to the Chinese when China is rising. China's GDP has quadrupled since 2001, tripled since 2003, doubled since 2009. Do we think that no one in the rest of the world knows all of that about us? For 10 years. For 10 years, Madam President. And now we're here with the government shutdown over his broken promise.
第8段。
And when she awakes, the world will shake. Napoleon got a few things wrong. He got this one absolutely right. Because China is today not just woken up. China has stood up and China is on the march. And the question for us all is where will China go? And how do we engage this giant of the 21st century? If you start looking at the numbers, they start to confront you in a big way. It's projected that China will become, by whichever measure, PPP, market exchange rates, the largest economy in the world over the course of the decade ahead. They're already the largest trading nation, already the largest exporting nation, already the largest manufacturing nation, and they're also the biggest emitters of carbon in the world. America comes second.
The incoming journalist would be informed of the relevant rules of regulations which attended his accreditation. And then, in my case at least, and that of several other colleagues that I knew, he would be given a warning. And that was, always remember that whatever you write about China, it will not have the smallest effect on how our country develops. In my case, the veracity of this statement was borne out by subsequent reality.
Where America becomes number 2. So these three big strategic mistakes, I think, explain why the American population today is a very troubled population. and feels very insecure about the world. I wouldn't say that China has been making strategic mistakes, but I think it has been making some tactical mistakes. I think there was a point after the great global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, when some Chinese policymakers saw how badly the American and European economies performed in that crisis. And China, as you know, sailed through the crisis and continued to grow significantly. I think there were some Chinese policymakers also became overconfident and became a bit too pushy in their relationships with some of their neighbors. And as a consequence of that, some of the neighbors of China were a bit alarmed by China's behavior. But the good thing about China is that Chinese policymakers learn very fast and change course. And you now notice that China's relations with its neighbors have improved again after going through a slight rough patch after the global financial crisis. So it's very important for China also not to become complacent, because it is going to be a very challenging world. So when China becomes number one, the concern about China will rise among its neighbors. This is perfectly natural. If you live in a small global village and one house in the village becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, the other occupants of the global village begin to worry, wow, this house is so big. Is it going to become much, much bigger? So China...
Extraordinary speed, closing the gap to the United States, 2005 and then 2011. And then in 2014, according to the International Comparison Program of the World Bank, according to GDP measured by purchasing power parity, China actually overtook, by this measure, the United States to become the largest economy in the world. This was a truly remarkable transformation in a remarkably short space of time. But it wasn't just the transformation of China. It was also the transformation, or the beginning of the transformation, of the world. Until very recently, the vast majority of the world that live in the developing countries were very dependent.
Being developed elsewhere, such as the case of Libra.
Well, Congressman, we have a lot of competition around the world. And you're right that over the last decade, pretty much all of the major internet platforms have been American companies with strong free expression values. And I just think that there's no guarantee that that is the state of the world going forward. Today, 6 of the top 10 companies are coming out of China.
To Facebook. You see Alipay and WeChat Pay working. Why not just do a Facebook version of Alipay in order to level this?
Congressman, I think you're right that they're certainly competing not just with us, but all of the American companies on this. Part of the infrastructure that they're building on is a lot more modern than some of what we would have to build on here. You know, as soon as we put forward the white paper around the Libra project, China immediately announced a public-private partnership working with companies like that to extend.
I also look forward to a discussion on the colossal military spending, wars of aggression, never-ending bombing campaigns and regime change wars, murder of millions of people and funding of terrorists by our ally, the United States, who in 2020 accounted for 39% of global military expenditure, while China's military spend was less than a third of that in 2020. While it is certainly true that China is playing catch-up militarily, it is fair to say that this is a response to very aggressive posturing by the US in particular. We have US warships in the South China Sea and countless US bases surround China on nearly every side. And it should be noted that there are no Chinese Navy ships in the Gulf of Mexico. This same China has not bombed anybody in the last 40 years. It was mentioned that China have multiplied their defence spend by 8 times in the last 20 years. But given that they have 4 times more people than the US, they are still only 1/3 of the US spend. And if you study what the Chinese are spending their money on, you would have to agree that their policy has been one of defence rather than offence. Thank you very much. This same China has not bombed.
采取切实的行动，真正的来实现应对气候变化的目标。可是我们现在看一些国家，我们不是看你说什么，我们是看你在做什么。到现在为止，有一些国家已经做出了承诺，但是他并没有落实他的承诺，并没有兑现他的承诺，并没有采取真正的行动。大幅度率先减排，讲了吗？要为发展国家提供资金和技术，你提供了吗？我们讲了20年，到现在并没有兑现。我们是发展的国家，我们要发展，我们要消除贫困，我们要保护环境，该做的我们都做了，我们已经做